traditional owners of the land on which I'm sitting, which is the Wiradjuri people, and to welcome elders, past and present, and any Indigenous people who might be with us. Thanks for coming today. There's a small number of us here, and it's great to see everybody. I would like to just frame what we're going to do today, and we may well end up inviting you to join us as panelists, which means you'll appear on video, and then you can choose to mute your video or not. That's up to you, but it could be a better way to share. And sharing is what we are here to do today, to share and to listen and to experience with each other what's going on in life at home. So this all started as an idea that came out of the coronavirus, obviously, because we are having more life at home. And I have just begun a competition via the Bathurst storytelling.com page, and with the support of the Bathurst Multicultural Storytelling Festival for modest prizes in cash. And the competition itself will run for 6 weeks. Now, the idea of today's workshop is that we talk about our stories and that we share those, and if anybody wants some tips on making their stories suitable for the competition, or just improving them or shaping them, then they're welcome to do that. In the absence of any specific content like that, we can basically just share stories. So to that end, what I might do is invite people to raise their hands if they want to say anything or say. And my first question would be, is there anybody who's come along with some content that they specifically would like to share? Mia Lee has raised her hand. Can you talk, Mia?
Hello, Jock and everyone.
Hi, Mia.
I will share.
Sorry, Mia, you have dropped out.
No, I'm back.
Hello.
Hi, Jock and everyone. I can share something later on in the session.
Oh, that's great. Is that a video?
I can share.
I've also got a. They're great. I've also got a photo. What? As well. Yeah. So Jody, you've come up as a panelist. Did you have something to share as well? I might just say, while we wait for Jody to, or anyone else to raise their hand about the content, that the competition itself is a in 4 media, across 4 media. So that is photo, writing, video, and audio. So you can choose any of those formats. The purpose of today is to share stories, so you don't have to have a video, a photo, an audio, or some writing. You can just share your experiences. So we have some content from Meow. And do we have any other content from anybody? I'll take that as a no at this stage. What I might do is share my screen and show one of the photos that has come in from Meow, as one of the first competition entries. Now, the title of this photo that I'm about to share, under the theme of life at home, is Let's Be Honest. Thanks for sharing, Meow. Looks like it's pretty tough for you at home.
And this comes from, this idea comes from when everyone is thinking changing life to home, let's just appreciate how nice it is. And actually, I have done that as well. For example, enjoy cooking, enjoy spending time with family, and go to the backyard to observe the leaves, the autumn colors. And then one day I think, come on, let's be honest. So this is the origin of this photo.
Yeah, that's fantastic. One of the, there's a few principles of photography that I'd be happy to discuss, and I'd be very welcome. Anyone who wants to actually join in by chat or by talking is welcome to give their ideas as well. But one of the main principles of photography that I talk about with students when I'm teaching up the hill at Charles Sturt Uni in Bathurst is having a strong subject, not burying your subject back in the photo, but making it very clear what the subject is. And of course, the subject has a context. So in this case, the subject is very clear and in the forefront, as you, evidently, as is the message or the purpose of the communication. Does anybody have any thoughts on photos that they'd like to share? Please. I can't see your name there, but I can see you putting your hand up.
Hi, I'm Kathleen. I work with Cade at Corinne School, and I am an avid reader and I dabble a bit in writing.
Mm-hmm.
And over this period where it's been quite interesting for us at school and working from home, I've probably monologued my time through my dogs, my miniature schnauzers. So I've done it comedically, and I have, I think I've just lost you somehow.
Oh no, we're here. It's just we removed the photo. I'm listening. You did it comedically.
Right. Oh, no, I'm back. Yes, I've done it comedically through my dogs. So I've taken lots and lots of photos of them doing things that normally I would do with my friends, like getting dressed up on a Friday night and having drinks and things like that. So they have gotten dressed up.
With your dogs?
Yes. Yes, so I've dressed them, and then I've been putting posts out as if they were coming from the boys. So, you know, like, you know, now that mum doesn't have any friends, we're allowed to actually have an alcoholic drink, and then I would show them in poses, and one would be sort of asleep and things like that. But how to put that back into a complete story would be something that I think I would need to have to work on.
That's a good question. Do you feel like you've got a series of photos, 6 or 10 or 12 or more photos?
More, yes.
Yes. Yeah, you've got a few options there. Are you able to share any of those photos?
Probably not through this laptop, just because it's a work laptop and I don't have those photos on it. They're actually on my phone. But I would be able to download them from my phone to your central location. Yes. So,
okay. Well, just on the principle of having a range of photos and thinking about how to present them, my first thoughts, and we also have another senior lecturer here from the School of Communication, and I'll ask David in a sec, but my first thoughts were around photo galleries, and secondly, making a video from photos.
Oh, okay.
So I can come back to both of those and just talk about them briefly. But David, did you have any thoughts on this this idea of using photos for content?
Yeah, I was thinking. Hi, everyone. I was thinking while you were talking there about a series of photos. I was thinking maybe you could make it a slideshow, you know, and as a movie, which you could easily do using something even like PowerPoint, you know, because you can create a slideshow, put in a soundtrack, do some transitions, add in text and effects and those kinds of things to help tell the story, and then export it out as a movie. So it could well be that where you've got more than one or two photos, if you felt that it would work having a longer series, that might be one way of capturing all those different nuances of all those moments of life, perhaps. That's what popped into my head anyway.
That makes sense. So when you say a slideshow, how would that look to you? If you can imagine some of those home photos with the dogs and maybe some of the comedic kind of contextualizing, how would a slideshow work to you? What would be the elements that you could imagine?
To me or to...
Yeah, to you, David.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it would be, I would be looking, if I was watching it, I'd be looking for not just kind of random photos, but maybe a sequence that told a story, or, you know, if it was just the photos. But you could put in, you know, certainly if you're doing it in Photoshop, of course, you can add in text elements like almost subtitles. You could add like voice bubbles to the dogs, those kinds of things. So, you know, you could really add in a whole bunch of different elements to enhance the storytelling with the photos. Not detracting from the photos themselves either, because, you know, there might be some nice images that you would like to share that, as Jock was saying before, are just kind of strong, striking images in their own right. But then there might be other kind of, I'm thinking of the comedic elements, you know, voice bubbles, captions, you know, arrows pointing out things. You could really play with that. So I'd probably be looking at those kinds of things.
And what medium would you see this being consumed? Like how would you get that to an audience? You mentioned perhaps making it in PowerPoint, and there's other places you could make it, but PowerPoint's accessible.
Yeah.
How would me or you or anyone end up seeing Catherine's work?
I would make it as a movie format.
Okay.
Mainly because then you could get that sense of motion into your story, you know, transitions between different images, and if you wanted to use text and effects kind of for effect as well, you know, you could get that sense of things popping in and out. So you'd want that sense of it being a kind of multimedia experience. And you might want to add in sound effects, you know, which you could easily record on your computer or on your phone or something and add in, or some music. You can find, I'm sure, some copyright-free music or music that you could use that could be a really interesting way of telling a story. And if you've got access to something like PowerPoint or even Keynote, if you've got a Mac or something, I think you can create your slideshow, create all the timings and effects and those kinds of things, get the timing of the whole thing right, and then export it. You can export it as a movie, and then there's a whole bunch of places that you could upload it, you know, YouTube and those kinds of places as well. And
from YouTube,
Facebook.
You could embed that, or Facebook indeed, yeah. And either of Facebook or YouTube movies or others like Vimeo can be then embedded in a website and so on, or the link can be shared and so on. So that,
because at this stage I've done them as Facebook, little mini stories on Facebook of the rise and downfall of Xavier and Oliver. You know, the miniature schnauzers, because they're miniature schnauzers, and you know, sort of what isolation has done to them and their mother, who's become the crazy dog lady.
It could be your title.
Well, it is becoming, don't you worry. You know, and you know, they have many outfits now. So, you know, part of what I thought would be, you know, one of the days would be me going completely crazy and making them dress in all their different clothes and doing runway runs, you know. So just really getting into that comedic downfall of the normal, you know, like the teacher-like person to the end of it where I'm just this crazy dog lady that, you know, is visually a mess and is, you know, sitting, drinking and eating with my dogs and, you know, that sort of thing. But
well, this is
I've
a
done
persona.
that to an extent.
You've created a persona already. You've created that in your Facebook work.
Yes.
And you're talking about how do you develop this persona in maybe in a longer form, which is, and David suggested a way.
That's great.
I agree with that idea. Another way you could do something that's quite similar is in video editing software. So that could be free software. You don't have to, you know, buy the expensive professional stuff. So Windows and Mac both have those, like iMovie, or there's even some Australian ones on Windows. The name, I think Resolve, I think it is. That's an Australian one, but there's a range of those. And you could just lay the photos one after the other and give them a duration of whatever you choose. So you could stay on them for 2 seconds or 10 seconds, whatever you like. Not too long, generally. And then underlay music and, for example, narration or anything really that you want. But you could have your own voice track running there. Now, either of these, you know, end up with a similar result, I think. I think another thing you can do with photos in videos is you can do what's called the Ken Burns effect. So you start with the image at a certain, might be say at the wide shot or the full image, and then you apply that effect, which is often just an automatic effect that you just choose from the menu, and it slowly zooms in on an aspect of the photo, and that creates an element of motion in the video, because obviously photographs are still. So that applies a little bit of the motion that you do want in a video. And you don't want to overuse it, but it's a good tool for using photos in video, I think. Yeah.
Great,
so,
thank you. They are some great ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's a question of reaching your audience.
Yes, yeah.
The other aspect of video, speaking of some form of turning photos into a visual and audio experience, or an audio visual experience that goes through time, is emotion. So you're getting motion from moving from one photo to the next, potentially from the Ken Burns effect or whatever. But the emotion is the other important part of video. And I think you're getting that from your comedy, from your character, your persona. And so I think it's a strong idea. I look forward to seeing it. Thanks for sharing the idea.
No, that's okay.
Any questions or thoughts before we see if anybody else has some content that they wanted to share or talk about, or some experiences?
No, that's all from me. Thank you.
David, any final thoughts? No? Okay. So
no, for me, thank you, but sorry about the phone.
Oh no, that's life at home.
Just one thing I was going to say, Jock, too, is that if folk are interested in exploring, kind of movies and slideshows, there's a lot of apps, free apps that they can use on their phone as well. So, and certainly even kind of fairly fancy video editing, if people don't, want to do it on their computers, they might find that they can do it on their phone or their tablet as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that can be easier too if you've shot it on those smartphone devices or whatever, that it's just right there to bring into those apps. Can be a little bit simpler potentially. Yeah, thank you both. So is there anyone else who has some content that they might want to share, or an experience that they would like to share? I know, Meow, we have you parked there with some potential video. Anywhere else? Anyone else? Should we have a look at, while I wait for anyone to put up their hands, should we have a look at, Meow, what you have? I have a couple of other of your photo entries here. This one has turned a theme of the month. It's an angle, you could say. There's an angle on toilet paper there. Here's one that's perhaps a little bit more middle class in its presentation of aesthetics. And there's Ma getting her exercise. And lastly, what's the significance of the weed?
This is my mom is currently visiting me from China. She has diabetes, and she when she was in China, she really liked this particular weed, and then the community that she exercised with in China, they fight for this particular weed because it tastes really bitter. It's called dandelion, and
Dandelion.
Dandelion,
Yeah.
and it cures the diabetes. So after she came to Australia, she takes walks in the parks or around the neighborhood, and she discovered that, oh wow, here in Australia, no one actually wants it. It's a weed. So every time she goes out, she will grab some from this roadside. So she took it back home, and then she will eat it at lunchtime, and she really enjoyed it. And what I found was in my backyard. In my backyard, I have this. So this is quite a surprise for Ma's experience in Australia.
Indeed, and then she also found purslane as well. But what happened when we went up to the mountain?
So there was one day, Ma said, okay, let's go to the mountain to get some, because we went to the Inland Sea of Sound Festival, and she saw a lot of this dandelion on the top of the mountain. And she said, let's have a campaign. So we drove up to the mountain, but as we were picking this up from the ground, a lady told us the council had been spraying the land, spraying the weed. So we said, uh-oh. But one more thing that she insists. The other day it was raining a lot, and she was so happy. And I said, what's happening? She said, now you see it's raining. Then the rainwater will wash all the chemical spray out of the grass. Then I can grab more. So literally the second day after the rain, she went back to grab more.
Yeah, right, to stock up again, because it became, once we thought about the council spraying on the mountain, we were wondering about the council spraying it down on the in the city too, where Ma was picking her purslane and dandelion up. So that's actually that's a story in itself, Meow. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and one more thing that I like to share is how probably local people here don't eat fish head, but since Ma came over here, and we discovered that we can grab fish head every Thursday from the truck that comes to the Bathurst. And Ma said, oh my God, this fish head is free, or like only $5 each. Like in China, it'd be really expensive. And every Thursday she has been cooking fish heads for us. So that's another adventure. That also shows the difference between, I would think it's the cultural difference, or maybe just some difference in habits. And Ma has been looking for example, pig trotters or chicken feet, all these sorts of things. But apparently we couldn't get it from the butcher. Like they don't normally sell it.
Yeah, so fish heads, pig's trotters and chicken feet are things that I think quite often I've heard in the past Australians kind of go, oh my God, I couldn't eat that. So I agree, it's a cultural difference. So it would seem that Australians don't like extremities. But one of the things that happened with the fish head was that we were eating that for lunch and then we didn't have any room left for the live lobster. So we left the live lobster scratching and scratching and scratching away on its box. And then we didn't really know how to eat it. And then we had dinner and we didn't have the lobster. And then we figured out that we couldn't leave the lobster there forever because, it was only going to survive a certain amount of time. So you had to Google how to cook a live lobster, and Ma started to have a go at it on the dining room table. And I refused to be involved because I was too much of a wimp. And then it was only when you screamed that I had to come in to, in effect, rescue you from the lobster and help out Ma to finish making the lobster. When I told my mum about it, she told me how inhumane we were, and that we've got the methodology completely wrong. But that's what happens when you Google things. You get told one way to do things. But we ended up eating it because we knew it wouldn't last for long. We ended up eating it at 10 p.m. at night with some Italian red wine, and I'm not sure it was worth $80. What do you think?
I don't think so either.
Yeah,
it was just an experience.
It was, yeah. I think it was probably an experience for the lobster too. So anyway, what else has been going on? Life at home. Thanks for sharing your photos and your stories, Mia.
I'm still trying to figure out how I can share the video because I found it was so funny. But let me just see whether I can connect it. But you go ahead and then I'll let you know when I find it.
Sure, maybe you can download it to your laptop. That's one possibility. And it would be easier to share from there if you logged into the meeting from your laptop. Okay, so an opportunity for people to share any stories from home now. So can I just ask, I have a little presentation, if you like, about storytelling. It includes some of the insights I've gathered over the years. I suppose I have to confess that it's actually decades. Shall I share some of those insights into storytelling with some of the time that we have left? I'd be very happy to hear anyone's stories, but in the absence of that, I could have a little, I could show you a little bit about the storytelling that I've been thinking of. So please put your hand up if you want to make a comment, or please just jump in, actually, just talk. But this is some of my accumulated knowledge. So what happened to me as a writer was that I was writing with way too many words. And then I discovered brevity. Of course, as a journalist, I was always thinking about accuracy. And in terms of storytelling, I gradually became more and more aware of clarity. So these are my ABCs of writing: accuracy, brevity, and clarity. The problem was that got me to be writing reasonable news stories, but it was a little bit too terse, and what it was lacking was story. It took me quite a few years to figure out that storytelling was at the core of what I wanted to do and at the core of what good journalism should contain, and also at the core of what people do and feel and the way that they make sense of the world. So the key insight I developed was that scenes were critical in storytelling. And by scenes, there's so many great stories that we tell, and they all contain scenes. They all contain, as a general kind of a rule, they all contain imagery. So that's fairly obvious in photo and video, although which image is the question. But in writing, it's also true, in the sense that words are abstract. What you need to do to bring an audience with you in a story is to create an image with words. And that transfers the ideas that are abstract in words and language into those more concrete modes in our brains. I believe, and this is where I'm stepping somewhat away from science, although there is science in this area, but that we ultimately think in images. And that's the point of imagery. So I want to just use Hollywood and HBO to just make a little point about writing and imagery, if I may. And please jump in if you want to argue with me. So first of all, great stories have themes and big questions. That's sort of at the foundation. It drives the story, it justifies it, it gives it a purpose. And that sort of lies underneath, if you like. It's not always obvious, and it's certainly not necessarily overt in every scene. If you think of Breaking Bad, the themes were what is important to a man, what goes on for a middle-aged man when he faces death. In The Sopranos, funnily enough, a story about a criminal gang was ultimately a story about family. And there were so many examples particularly from cable TV and HBO, as we know, in the last few decades. The bottom left there is The Wire, which asks big questions about how a city works and how communities interact. But ultimately, stories are driven by main characters, as we know. The reason that Hollywood likes good-looking actors like Harrison Ford is because we all know that good-looking people are more intelligent, more honest, and have higher morals, and therefore make better stars. So
excuse me while I just go and vomit.
Yeah. I thought that was the the bucket scene.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we care about the main character, obviously. I think this is known. But what do you do with your characters? You put them in situations, and every scene that you situate a character in has a question underneath it. In this scene from Blade Runner, it's will Deckard take the job that he's being forced to take, basically, and how will he negotiate the pressure being put on him? So in these scenes, these characters face obstacles. for example, will he have to kill the robots, or will he be killed? And they face challenges. Can Deckard, a human, allegedly, show that he actually is a human? So now I have a question. What are the 3 most beautiful words in the English language? Any offers? No
I would
offers.
have to say family.
Okay. Yep. That's
Most
fair
beautiful
enough.
word.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Someone said cellar door is only 2. I assume that means that they love wine. And I love you has been suggested in other contexts. But I'm not that soppy. I'm going to suggest that what happened next are the most beautiful words in storytelling. Here we have a life and death situation. Will he fall? Is the question. So in these scenes, in these great stories, one of which I'm using as a case study, there are always questions. And it is these questions that keep us hooked into the story. So this is one of my main points to share with you. So these questions, of course, are generally resolved. And if they're resolved with a surprise, a very powerful emotion, then all the better. So in this case, the robot who is trying to kill saved him. I mean, Deckard, Harrison Ford, was trying to kill this robot, but the robot saved him, showing more humanity than the humans. It's part of what makes this film so brilliant. It has such a depth of critique of humanity in addition to all of the sci-fi elements. So I can see, I'm going to stop sharing because I've talked for quite a while, and I can also see that Mia has found a way to share her story. Nice bit of improvising there, Mia.
I transferred the file into my laptop, and I can use my camera to play. So let me just, how about I give everyone a bit of background first. So the lady on the left,
great.
The lady on the left you see is my mom, who just as I mentioned visited me in December last year, and she couldn't actually go back because of the virus. So she is stuck here now, and then so she is. So this is lunchtime, and she is having a conversation with her son-in-law, who can also be regarded as my husband, who is
very good looking.
Who is coincidentally, and his name is Jock.
Oh yeah, there's only 2 of them in Bathurst.
Yes.
So
who in fact is a very lucky guy.
Remind us what we were talking about in this scene.
And so we have been stuck together at home for how many months now?
Is it 5 weeks, 6 weeks? Yeah.
I think longer than that, yeah. And so basically every day, apart from talking with me in Mandarin, Ma wouldn't be able to talk with Jock. And so Jock, apart from talking with me in English, he couldn't talk with Ma in Mandarin. So I'm going to show you a conversation that just happened between the 2 of them, see how they communicate. So let's see. Is that clear enough for everyone?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay,
Thanks.
let me just show it.
完了议和谈判又出去了，完了是跟那个墨西哥的围墙要建里头呢，完了难民，完了还不收难民。
Ma's explaining South China Sea and why China should own the South China Sea.
Denture. This little piggy went to market. This little piggy stayed home. This little piggy had pork buns. This little piggy had none. This little piggy went wee 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 wee
他说是啥？
all the way home.
他说是几个？他跟我说是一样的。完了议和谈判又出去了，完了。
So at the end of the conversation, so Ma is using her hands to count what Donald Trump has done in this various situation. So Ma is counting how many stuff that Donald Trump has been doing, and then so he's using her fingers like, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then Jock apparently didn't get any of that, but in response, he said, 对对对对对 means yes, 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 but he said 但是 means but, and then he said one piggy, the other piggy, the other piggy. So completely irrelevant. So at the end, Ma was asking me, what is he talking about? Are we talking about the same thing? So I found that was really funny.
Yeah, well, it was certainly a different way to talk about geopolitics for me. Yeah, I believe we breached the cultural divide there quite successfully. Does anybody else have a story to share? Thank you, Mia, for sharing a video. You know, with that, Lorraine, hello.
Hello, everyone. I'm at the very furthest end of this spectrum with technology. I'm 84, and my life has taken a turn back for 2 decades. I used to teach tutor maths for maybe 20 years, and I loved it. And then, of course, I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. And we live in a block of units, and it's a very happy community. And one of our fellow residents has her grandchildren come to live with her for one reason or another, and they've missed out on a lot of maths. So now I'm finding I'm reinventing myself and tutoring a year 6 lass who has missed a lot of schooling, and I'm tutoring her in maths, and thankfully maths never changes. No matter what happens out there in the technology world, maths stays the same. So to be, to keep the rules, the self-isolating rules and all of that, we've set up a system of under the door maths. So I set her maths and leave it under our door, and then she does it and it comes back. It's really high tech, I can tell you, my life at the moment. And then I write comments and it keeps going, and we're getting good results. So that's my life at home at the moment, teaching maths, apart from the usual boring tidying cupboards and doing exercises and all that. Yeah, so it's interesting how your life takes a different turn no matter how old you are. So that's my life at home at the moment. If anyone wants a little bit of maths tutoring, I'd be happy to help. So
under the door.
Under the door.
That's a good story. It's a bit like distance learning, except the distance is only 10 meters.
Yeah, just a flight of stairs.
Have you enjoyed it?
Oh, I love it. Yes, yes. I really like a bit of maths and a bit of pencil and paperwork. It's so refreshing not to have to use computers and things.
And so you're in your comfort zone.
Yeah, I'm in my comfort zone. But I did manage to link into this today, only because Jock kindly set it all up for us. And yes, so I've enjoyed seeing all the high-tech things that are available for the generations that are behind my generations. It's very exciting.
Well, one of the great things that's coming out of this is that I suppose it's fair to say that people who are a bit older are a little bit less tech savvy, like you kind of confessed yourself, Lorraine. But people are coming on board, like you and like my mum, and it's actually bringing a range of generations into technologies that, you know, that's a benefit, I think. It's necessity as well, but it's a benefit.
Yes, I guess I'm starting to agree with you. Just starting.
Oh, well, thank you very much for sharing. As we move towards wrapping up, I may share one or two little more story thoughts, but I'd be very keen to hear anyone else's story if they wanted to share. If not, then I could conclude with a few story thoughts. Speak now or forever hold your peace, or until next year. Okay, so I didn't want to leave this discussion without getting to the imagery bit. Excuse me if you're suddenly about to get a bit of vertigo. So in summary, a story is a character in a range of situations facing complications and ultimately, in the classic model, resolution. It's not the only model, but it's a model and it's very successful. In terms of imagery in writing, I invite people to think in camera shots. So a close-up like this gives emotion and detail, whereas a wide shot gives a character's predicament. And you can write in close-up, you can write in wide shot, in a sense. What you're doing, in effect, is you're visualizing as a writer the scene or the image, whether that's wide, mid, close, and whatever the subject is, and then you're describing that. And that is a way that you can tell real stories with scenes and character and dialogue, with detail and action. And if you have those images in your head, then you can try to communicate those to an audience. And it's my argument that that's effective storytelling. Here's an example. This is a true story. It's the first ever winner of the Pulitzer Prize for feature writing back in the 1970s. Just read the first paragraph. I'll read it out as you go. In the cold hours of a winter morning, Dr. Thomas Barbiducker, chief brain surgeon at the University of Maryland Hospital, rises before dawn. His wife serves him waffles, but no coffee. Coffee makes his hand shake. There's not a wasted word. Brevity. It's a very clearly told story, and we rely on the journalist to be accurate. But the thing about this paragraph is his wife serves him waffles, but no coffee. That's a scene. It's a scene of only 8 words, or even just 5 words. His wife serves him waffles. But what you see is a woman leaning over a table, putting down waffles on a table to the main character, Dr. Ducker, the surgeon. So with that simple bit of writing, the writer has taken us out of description and into a place and two characters interacting. And that, to me, is the essence of good writing. So I wanted to make sure that I got to that point before we finish today. There's more to say on this, of course, but for the moment, maybe that's enough, unless anyone has any comments or questions or thoughts. Thank you, David, for your last comment in the chat. Thanks for joining us. It's 12 o'clock, which is a very good time to go hunting lobsters on the streets of Bathurst. Thank you to Bathurst Readers and Writers Festival for hosting us. Thank you, Heidi and Kylie, for your work and your admin support. And thank you, everybody, for coming along and chatting. Thank you, Catherine, Meow, David, Lorraine, for sharing, and everyone for listening. I might say goodbye now, unless there was anything else, Kylie or Heidi, to add.
I just wanted to thank you, Jock, so much for sharing with us this morning, and for everyone who came along. We did have some technical issues, but we have recorded the session and we'll make that available when we get a chance to, probably later this week.
Great. Yes, it's a tricky environment and we're all learning.
Yes.
And, you know, step by step. So thank you again for that technical support, and it's nice to see some faces there to say goodbye. So I'll say goodbye. It's good night from me, and it's good night from him. And okay, thanks for coming, everyone. See you soon.